Welcome back to another edition of today's episode. Carol and the End of the World is a new limited series on Netflix created by Dan Guterman. On this podcast, we're discussing the pilot and the distraction, the first two episodes which follow Carol Kohl as she lives out her final months on Earth before the planet is completely destroyed and humanity is wiped out forever.
Give me your comparisons.
Okay, I have a lot of comparisons. All right. Twilight Zone, Last Man on Earth, Corporate, Fired on Mars, Louis, Big Prize, Door, and then there was one that was just in my head that I lost.
So you went with TV shows?
Some TV shows. I also went with a few stray thoughts. I had The Purge in there, and then I also had Don't Look Up.
Well, I have Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, which I think is an underrated 2012 romantic comedy.
The Steve Carell one, and then the one lady from Sex and the City.
Yeah,
right?
no, with Keira Knightley. The summary is, with an impending asteroid collision that will destroy Earth, Dodge embarks on a journey to reunite with his high school sweetheart. Along the way, he meets his quirky neighbor, Penny, and I think the Sex and the City character that you're talking about might be his wife in the movie, but I'm not sure. But then I also had Silent Night, which came out 2 years ago. Not the Joel Kinnaman film, but almost to the day 2 years ago, December of 2021. A group of friends who reunite for one final Christmas right before an ambiguous apocalypse will wipe out all of humanity, also starring Keira Knightley. And then a week after that is when Don't Look Up came out on a different streaming network.
Yeah, but the similarity between Don't Look Up and this is it's the most connected because Don't Look Up is all about denial. It's about people not wanting to face the truth. They don't want to look up, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to see what's coming. This is all about acceptance. Everyone except for, well, not except for Carol, but mostly except for Carol, has accepted that they're going to die. And so what do people do in that circumstance? Well, a lot of them are extroverts and decide that this is their time to live life to the fullest, to YOLO. And so Carol is kind of left behind, wishing that the world was pre-pandemic, wishing that the world was a place where she could still go to work and go to Applebee's and maintain that routine that she's so used to, while she's seeing her friends and her family do crazy things, skydiving, her parents become a throuple, they're going off on a cruise, they're now nudists, like it's just insanity around her and she feels like the only one with a brain. So she's kind of shutting down within herself. She's having an existential crisis. She's already middle-aged because I think it's showed in the second episode that she was part of the class of 1978 and they have cell phones. So I believe that we're in the current day and age. So I don't know how old she is, but she must be at least middle-aged.
Well, it's actually strange they say a thing about the age because this cast is primarily older than a lot of other animated shows. Martha Kelly.
So this is like the Boston Legal of animated shows.
Yeah, it's Martha Kelly who plays Carol is 55, and then you have Beth Grant who plays Pauline. She's 74. She was a celebrity coordinator for Jimmy Carter's first presidential campaign. And then you have Lawrence Pressman who played Bernard. He's 84. He's known for Doogie Howser, MD, which premiered back in 1989. Ladies' Man premiered back in 1980, and probably my favorite fact, he was in a 1971 film called The Hellstrom Chronicles, a documentary horror and apocalyptic prophecy film, which won the 1972 Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature.
Interesting. Well, I can tell you one person who isn't old that's on the cast would be Yumulak.
Yes, somehow he has found his way into the show. That was the point I was getting to.
Yumulak
24
from
years
Solar
old.
Opposites.
Yes,
What's his real name?
Sean Gambrone. He is at least half the age of, I think, the second youngest person in this show.
He plays the son of Eric. Eric is someone who's become obsessed with Carol, the main character, after a one-night stand in the first episode. And I think he's going to... Everybody... You see, when you're about to die, I guess it's kind of a common phenomenon that everybody clings to something, right? And in the second episode, the name of the episode is The Distraction. Why is it The Distraction? Because everybody's looking to distract themselves. And while most people do it with like spending egregious amounts of money, going on vacations, having fun that way, well, Carol does it. She joins an office community, a group mind thinking of people where they go every single day to an office, even though all the other offices are shut down, and they just do corporate analytical accounting work in cubicles. So that's her thing.
That's almost straight up like Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. At the beginning of the movie, everyone knows that the world is going to end, but they're trying to find a manager for like whatever they're working for, whatever job they have, because they can't fill the
boss
shift.
Here is just clicking numbers on a calculator and acting like he's upset about something when he hires her. But whenever she tries to approach the issue and say, what are we doing here, or anything like that, it takes until the end of the episode till she actually makes a friend who helps her get the toner that she needs. After a failed experiment of her going to every single Office Max around trying to replace the toner and then her having to rob her friend for it. But the point is, like, everybody is seeking out a distraction, and in the big surprise door, they did the same thing. So this new thing came into town. Obviously, it wasn't going to destroy the world, but it did cause an issue in people's lives because it was prophetic. It was telling people exactly what their potential was, and so it was causing them to break up with their, like Dusty's parents. They separated. His dad became a male model. His mom went to go find herself in Europe. It's very similar to here, where her parents, Carol's parents, again rebonded, joined a throuple, and then are now touring as nudists to different countries.
I now understand what Dan Guterman was saying, the creator of this, when he said that the end of the world was really supposed to be in the back of the show. Because for something that is so plot-centric on the apocalypse, what he's saying, and it seems like from the summary that you're giving, people were more just trying to find any way to not think about it.
2 of my 3 pros for the show follow that exact same thought process, because it's a never-ending supply of what would people do in this situation, and they're able to show it mostly from the animation and the background jokes. People flying past in their motorcycles, wearing masks, having sex constantly, there are parties going on, and it's a lot more kumbaya, people have embraced it and are just YOLOing it out there, versus The Purge, where people would just be killing each other and there'd be crime. And I'm sure that would be more realistic if it was kind of a mix of both, but the tone of the show is not supposed to be anything more depressing than what Carol's life is already, which is that she's a lonely person, she's introverted, and she's spending the last moments or the last bit of time that she has doing nothing different, and also kind of watching everybody else succeed and have fun without her.
So I was just about to ask if the show was feel good, but you're saying it's not supposed to be more depressing than Carol, yet that's who we follow.
Yeah, my third pro is that the awkwardness of the parents, the family, their pressure that they're putting on Carol, they're constantly so what have you been doing? What are you doing with your amazing amount of time that we have on our hands? And they're pushing her to go out there, and that's why she goes and has the one night stand. But it really is in the second episode where she finds that group of like-minded individuals who just don't want to process the end of the world in that way. They don't want to go to Tibet and become a monk. They don't want to try different foods and become an adrenaline junkie like her sister, who's just going across the world bar hopping and skydiving. But her thing, it's definitely approaching comedy from that sad way, not sad clown, but sort of.
It's strange because Dan Guterman, he was a satirical writer for The Onion for 11 years, and then he wrote for the Colbert Report for the last 4, and probably the reason that the show was greenlit was because he worked on Rick and Morty humor, yet you're saying that the humor is more down to earth. And he worked on...
And very existential, because the first scene of the show, and throughout the second episode, she's dreaming. She's having these moments of just seeing her life from afar. She's having a butterfly emerge from a cocoon. All that kind of animated stuff. Yeah.
The existential makes more sense, because I was going to say that Guterman, he worked on famous episodes for Rick and Morty. I'm talking the Ricks Must Be Crazy, the car engine Inception episode that I think even guest starred Stephen Colbert, the Rick Lantis mix-up, the season 3 episode with all the different Ricks and Mortys, and then 2 episodes later, the Morty Mind Blowers. Again, kind of all around that complex idea.
So yeah, you can compare it to Twilight Zone and Rick and Morty, but it's never gotten to that level where you can't follow the same stream of consciousness throughout the episode. Mm-hmm. In that second one, it's just her at her job. We see a brief moment of Eric freaking out that he can't have the girl that he just met, and he's completely obsessed with her. And then you see Yumulak, the son, whatever his real name is in the show, coming after Carol and asking her to go back to her dad. But besides that, it's all from Carol's perspective, and she's just trying to get toner the entire 30 minutes. So in a way, that drifts into my cons, because who is this show really for? It feels kind of like I'm watching a provoking or a short that you would see in someone's thesis in college, right?
Yeah.
There's the existential dreams. Her voice is very monotone throughout the whole thing, and there's so many series that kind of vie for this same sort of comedy. The Fired on Mars one that has Luke Wilson in it, I think.
Yeah, it is.
That's a very similar premise where everything around him is so crazy and spectacular. He's on a different planet. yet his day-to-day is just office work where he can't even perform his essential duties.
I don't like how you said the college thing, because I was going to bring up later how in 2021, for my final semester of college, I wrote a short film called Who to Call, and my script was about two brothers wondering who they were going to call as an asteroid was approaching Earth and about to destroy it. And it seems like you're saying this show is doing almost the exact same thing.
Well, I promise I wasn't thinking about that when I said that, but yeah.
You're saying it's just keeping it too low stakes, because even in things like Fiona and Cake and Adventure Time, they addressed apocalyptic events. They addressed the end of the world, which also starred Sean Gambrone, but it did so in such a way where it seemed like kind of it was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just reaching a new era of TV where shows like this can exist in a one-off form. It's a limited series. It's 10 episodes. It's kind of like a South Korean thing where they would release a season of something and that would be it. Mm-hmm. And it exists and it's there for anybody who wants to go back to it in 10 years. But it's not supposed to incite like this huge rebirth audience from Netflix for this specific type of content. Like, it's not the thing that they're promoting on the front page every single day. My biggest con, though, with the show is that it doesn't really add up. Remember in Don't Look Up, people are just at the very end accepting the fact that they're going to die. Everybody's freaking out, right?
Yes.
And so, like, the world goes into explosion mode, like, the TVs stop working, everything starts, like, falling apart. This has had, apparently, a very long time for people to get used to this, and the office buildings may be empty, but the grocery stores are still, like, working. Who's picking the fruit? Who's putting that stuff there? Also, the National Guard is running things, but why does the National Guard even care about this stuff when everybody's about to die in 7 months?
And yeah,
cable news is still working. The subways are still working. Shipping is still working. You can still send an Amazon package. Cell phone towers must still be there. The infrastructure that I would expect to crumble, and in some parts it has, like the Office Maxes, but in a lot of places it hasn't, and I just couldn't make sense with that. The only way that it could make sense, and it's not for this show, but this could be a giant ad for why automation is good to embrace. Because if there ever was a situation where humanity was about to die, and we had every computer there doing the task for us, the day-to-day stuff, then we wouldn't have to worry about that, at least.
And I understand that it's an animated comedy, but with something like Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, they had 3 weeks, and it even starts off saying that their plan to try and kill the asteroid didn't work. With Don't Look Up, they had like that middle point where they were planning on sending all those rockets to try and destroy it. It seems like with 7 months, humanity would try and save itself at least one more time or give a last-ditch effort, because like you're saying, that is over half a year. That is kind of a long time.
Well, keep in mind, too, that everything that we see is through Carol's perspective. So she's not part of the White House or whoever's making those decisions as to what the steps are to try to combat this thing. We're just left to understand that no one's expecting us to survive it. So it's basically already concrete, and that's why those last 7 months, it's kind of like getting a cancer diagnosis or something where you really only have a certain amount of time to live, and so everybody's like trying to make the most of it. I just don't understand why money means anything. You know?
Yeah.
And also why the Elon Musks of the world wouldn't be blasting off into space.
That's always been a question for me in terms of currency. Like, it seems like whenever they do these apocalyptic shows, in order to do it for like a lot of money, the people will like do something crazy. And maybe it's those people that don't believe in it that are doing the money.
Like, they feel because they've lived on Earth for their whole lives, that's all they know, that there's no way things could get to a point where it would be inhabitable. But at the same time, what was that Kevin, not Kevin James, what's his name? The Ethan Hawke movie that just came out.
Leave the World Behind.
That's the one you've been talking about?
Yes, because Inverse.com said that 2023 is the year of apocalypse media from January's Last of Us to December's Leave the World Behind.
What it really is people from the pandemic who were writing scripts finally got those scripts made and chucked out there and like produced and put out there. So that's why this is like very similar to pandemic feel to it.
I know that they based Carol off of who they were able to get, Martha Kelly, because Dan Guterman.
She's like a Daria mixed with Dilbert from the comic strips.
Well, the creator met her her in 2002 at a Just for Laughs festival, and then after she read a few pages, she decided to sign on to it. Donna, I guess you want to know, did you know who voiced her?
I recognized the voices, but I didn't really look into them. The only one that was very obvious was, again, Yemulak, because I've heard him so often. Yeah,
so it was the woman from Vice Principals, Walton Goggins and Danny Masterson.
Was she the blonde? The main lead blonde?
Yeah, no, the main one that takes over as the vice principal, or the principal.
That would have been much later in the series than I watched.
The director for the first episode, Erica Hayes, actually directed the Rick and Morty court clip that was released on YouTube in 2016.
Cool. No, I remember that, yeah.
And I think this
that was that long ago?
Yeah, other things like BoJack Horseman, which people have also compared this to. They say it's more BoJack Horseman than Family Guy.
No, it's BoJack Horseman because of the depression feel of the main character. However, the main character is less charismatic here. The third con that I have is that the main character is sort of dumb. She spends that entire third episode going to every single Office Max to find the toner. Then she finally goes to her friend's party and steals the toner from her at gunpoint, which I get is funny because of the situational comedy to it. But there were so many other ways of going about it. And also how she just continually, her lies fall on top of other lies when she's talking to her parents and stuff. I don't understand why at a certain point she couldn't just be like, you know what? It's the last 7 months. I'm doing whatever the fuck I want. That type of thing.
But that's what so many people, it seems like, in this show are doing anyways.
No. Right? I mean, not to actually go do something crazy, but to when they start judging her or when she's afraid of their judgment, at a certain point, just break free from that and say, you know what? If I want to break into an Applebee's, sit in a booth and cry for 6 hours, go ahead and try to stop me. I don't know why the police are doing their jobs either, because they stop her from sleeping outside in Applebee's. I guess some people just believe that it's not going to happen. This is like a Y2K situation. However, the difference is you can see the planet in the sky that's about to hit them, and it's beautiful. They animated it beautifully.
So what would you give it a passing grade?
Yeah, I would say that this show, for the audience that it's looking at, is definitely deserving of a watch. It's 6 out of 10, I would give it, because I'm not going to go out there to recommend it to anyone else, but I don't want to knock it too hard for the fact that it's not realistic to an apocalypse, because that's not the point of it. I also don't want to knock it too much because it feels too artsy for a lot of these other things. I will say that there are so many other things in the field, like you were talking about, that it would make it near the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
If you're just trying to make your way through all of them.
And if you're even talking about not just comedies, but other things like The Leftovers, or even The 100, The Walking Dead, Last Man on Earth, which I know you mentioned earlier, Black Mirror, Falling Skies, those were all shows I had that I thought you might compare it to.
Way closer to corporate than it is to all those, especially that second episode, because the corporate comedy, that Lance Reddick show, where it's there's a deep sarcasm to everything, and she is trying to talk to people around her in the desk job. She's enjoying it because that's what she wants in life. But at the same time, they're all named Terry, and they all refuse to speak to her because they're all grunt workers doing their job. And again, the only person she makes friends with is Donna.
That's a 6.9 on IMDb, around 500 reviews, and it seems like people enjoyed the first 6 episodes, and the last 4 episodes have been really polarizing. Either people have said that it's really good or really bad, but it's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 87% audience score.
It's really easy to watch. It's not one of those ones where I ever felt like I really wanted to turn it off because it was either so awkward or just so bad. I would say my favorite moment would be when in the first episode she was contacting her credit card company because she was afraid of the debt she was accruing, and she gets a message back from the actual president, the CEO of the bank, and the guy was writing everybody a note. He has a huge beard at this point. He's literally living his life as Aquaman in some random island, and he's telling everybody hey, you have no debt with me. Just live your life to the fullest. You've only got time. So it's all about just keeping sane.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.